Aloha, my name is Carl Dix. I started a group on Facebook page, a Facebook group called Clean House Hawaii, and clean with a K. And I had to do that to get the word out there on the street because I am a 100% media blackout. The media will not talk to me. The media will not contact me. The media will have nothing to do with me. And there's so much, the corruption is rampant here in Honolulu, Hawaii, and all of Hawaii. And it's time to clean house and set things straight here in Oahu and in Hawaii for the people of Hawaii. And I decided to do that through this election process. In the very beginning of the elections, there's a nomination process where you have people give you signatures verifying and stating that you are of good, sound character, you are an ethical person, and that you are a good person to run for office. And those signatures are very important, and those are referred to as your nomination papers. And those nomination papers are required to be signed by a certain amount of signatures according to different races, and they are a very intricate part of being a candidate, a legal candidate for a political office. And along with that, after you obtain the signatures, you're required to pay a fee and swear an oath. And then, and only then, are you an official registered candidate for political office, and your name shall appear on the ballot. And there was people running for office, campaigning, putting signs in the yard, and various accepting large donations in all over the news media, all over the TV, and they were not registered. They had not sworn an oath. They had not obtained signatures for nomination papers. Many of them had not even pulled the papers to get nomination signatures. They had done nothing. And many of them waited. The nomination process is from February 3rd to June 2nd. Many of those waited till June 2nd, June 1st, and just right before the deadline to officially register. And according to federal law, that's fraudulent misrepresentation. They're representing that they are a candidate registered, and they are not. And that is illegal. June 3rd begins the objection period. And I wanted to file objections to several candidates campaigning without being registered. The Office of Elections had no form. So I developed a form which the Office of Elections approved. And I proceeded to file objections to 11 different candidates in different races and different classifications. And there was over 100 total filed by other people also, over 100 objections filed. It was a determination period. And in the determination period, the Office of Elections and the city clerk look at the objections and are supposed to look at the evidence and render a determination based on the evidence. And that is for 7 days. They have to respond. And both departments summarily dismissed, obviously without reading any of the evidence or in regards to anything. They just brushed it aside. Next is the appeal period, where I appealed the decision rendered by the Office of Elections and the city clerk. I appealed to the Election Commission, and they are supposed to respond within 10 days and give a determination. I did that in writing, and yet it's been 45 days and I still have not received an official determination from the Election Commission. I did testify June 23rd, and I still have not got a decision from them. Appeal 2. Because the the Election Commission has not responded officially, I took it to the next level, First Circuit Court, Honolulu, and I have a case filed to appeal their lack of any determination. And because I had to file with the Supreme Court because the primary election proceeded without a determination on my objections to the nomination process and the appeals. I still do not have an answer to any of those, so I had to file in Supreme Court for the election results to be modified. In the case that I filed in the Supreme Court, there's currently a vacancy in the Supreme Court. So they brought a lower court judge, which is unqualified, to rule on the case. And the Office of Elections had made a motion to dismiss based on jurisdiction. And I was in the correct jurisdiction. And they added a bunch of memorandums, unrelated issues, which the judge ruled on those issues and not on the original motion to dismiss jurisdiction. I was in the correct court. Supreme Court Judge Temporary Tutu ruled in favor of the Office of Elections and dismissed the case in Supreme Court. Next step would be to appeal to the United States District Court. Supreme Court 2. I teamed up with another candidate, Banner, who's a disabled veteran, and we filed the case based on no decision on my circuit court case, which would change the outcome of the election, possibly. And I have a video of voter fraud, potentially. And there's a lot of disabled voting because of the mail-in ballot and COVID restrictions, and the whole election cycle is a mess because of COVID. And once again, in the Supreme Court of Hawaii, there is a vacancy that has not been filled. So they pulled in a lower court, unqualified, horrific record judge from the lower court and ruled against Banner also. The vacancy in the Supreme Court, Judge Pollack retired, and Ige conveniently has not filled that position, has really no desire to fill that position, in my opinion, because any case that comes up, he can pull whoever he wants from a lower court to fill that vacancy and get the decision he wants. Okay, Hawaii has the first ever mail-in ballot, which was allegedly passed, and Act 136 is in effect. And I did the research and I looked up Act 136, which it's common to just use the Senate and House bills which were combined and sign that into law. But the Act 136 that is on the Office of Elections website, the text of all of that is 96 pages, and about 30 to 40% of it is lined out, marked out, crossed off, and it's confusing. It's the worst piece of legislation I've ever seen in my entire life. Hawaii Revised Statutes is the law of Hawaii, and Hawaii Revised Statutes Title II is 176 pages that I printed out, and Hawaii Revised Statutes Title II Elections does not match Act 136 in many, many, many ways. The two do not go together. Now, another friend of mine, Calvin, he filed a case in the Federal District Court here in Honolulu, and that is in regards to disabilities from the mail-in ballot issues, disabilities of veterans, and many other issues, and a lack of consistency with the mail-in ballot here in Hawaii, and federal election laws, agreements between the states, and those issues. And then also, I encouraged him to add in a supplemental to his case, and we added in the Act 136 horrendous legislation and the fact that it doesn't match Hawaii Revised Statutes, and we added that in as a supplemental. On the Office of Elections webpage, it has a little link that says to read the full text of Act 136. And in that Act 136 on that site, page 61 talks about if you're dead or you are registered to vote somewhere else, that you should be disqualified from voting here in Honolulu. That's crossed off. I don't know who crossed it off or whatever. So that ultimately means they tried to have it so that they could not vote, by crossing it out, gives them the right to vote for dead people and people registered elsewhere. Okay, and I want to explain this. It's complicated the way the legal process and legal languages in that work, but whether or not dead people could vote before is irrelevant. Being that it's on the paper in the final accepted act, or whatever you want to call it, that dead people and people registered in other jurisdictions can vote, and then it's crossed off, preserves the right of the dead people to vote and people registered in other jurisdictions to vote. What that means is there was a whole bunch of extra ballots mailed out to people that have been dead, and the ballots showed up, and they still have the right to vote, according to the Act 136. And people that have moved away 20 years ago, the ballot showed up at the house at the address, whether it's rented or owned, or they can still vote, regardless they moved 20 years ago. That right is upheld by crossing that out. Brings us to the issue of the ballots themselves and the envelopes and the whole mail-out process. First of all, I received my ballot and I tried several different barcode readers to read the barcode on the ballot itself to see what numbers they were, see if the numbers matched anything, because the barcodes on the ballots, they just looked like lines. It did not look like a true barcode. And I tried several different barcode readers, and I could not get the barcode on there's 4 barcodes on each ballot, and I could not get any of them to read anything. The envelope, on the other hand, there's a barcode on the front, or the back, I guess, where you sign your name. That one, I instantly could pick up on the little square barcode. I forget what they call them, but that one would read, and that matched the envelope. But it didn't match a name, but it did match the number on that, matched that envelope. But the ballot inside, I could not find a way to tie the envelope to the ballot in any way, shape, or form. And the envelopes had this hole. The hole is driving me crazy. What is that hole for? And do all the ballots have the hole in the same place? I don't know. There's a lot of suspicion there. Okay, then we come to the ballot drop-off boxes in the parking lot of the city parks and state parks. They're unsecured. There's no security whatsoever, no surveillance of any kind. And the van pulls in about 9 o'clock at night, and then he goes over and starts to open the box. And he took with him from the van to the box 1 bin with a lid. And because typically he didn't think about this was the last day to gather the ballots. So that's what he did every day. He'd take the ballots and take them back to the van and take them to the station to get them counted or whatever they do. So then he had too many, but he filled the first bin, put the lid on. He got the second bin and threw some ballots in there. There was no lid for the second bin because that was the bin that was in the box to catch the ballots every day. And there wasn't a lid. So then he puts all the ballots in the second bin, goes to the van, and gets a lid to cover those ballots. And then they're secure. So then he carries both plastic bins to the van and puts them in the back of the van. And the van had at least 9 to 12 bins in the back of that van. That's just a side note. So then he goes back there to the big ballot collection box, and he reaches inside. There's a bin, plastic bin, full of ballots with a lid already on it. I don't see how that's possible unless they were put there intentionally and stacked ahead of time. Had to be. And then he takes that bin to the van, locks up the box, comes back, takes a photograph to prove that he locked the door, and he leaves. And by the time all of this happens, it's almost 9:30 on election night, and this is Kaneohe District Park. How does he get the ballots from that van to the Office of Elections or the counting center in half an hour and have the ballots, 9 to 12 bins full of ballots, counted by 10 o'clock. That's impossible.